The oldest and strongest human emotion is fear. And the oldest and strongest type of fear is trepidation of the unknown. When we were children, our parents told us that monsters didn't exist. But we were sure that something was lurking under the bed or in the closet. Fear sees even if our eyes are closed. Welcome to the realm of the arcane. My name is Lon Strickler. Join me as I examine unexplained creatures, strange manifestations, and remarkable realities. Imagine this next hour as a voyage of discovery to strange lands, seeking not for new territory, but for new knowledge of the supernatural. Come on board as we begin this adventure together. Hey folks, good evening and welcome to another episode of Arcane Radio, where we explore the unexplained live on Beyond Explanation. I'm your host, Lon Strickler, coming to you from the hallowed fields of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Now, before I introduce tonight's guest, BFRO and Famous Monsters 14 Research team member Carter Bouchard will present a Bigfoot report that he personally investigated. So, let's bring on the audio.
Phantom and Monsters, Sasquatch Report Number 1. On the 7th of June in 2013, a friend of mine and I decided to visit the Monkey Mountain Nature Reserve in Grain Valley, Missouri, as she believed we might catch the sight of a Sasquatch, since there had been documented sightings in that area and she knew that I was interested in the Sasquatch legend. As we traveled down R.D. Mize Road toward the parking lot area, we were startled when a large creature on all fours crossed the road less than 100 feet in front of us. My friend stopped the car and we watched it cross the road from north to south. It appeared it had come from a field to the right of us. It was covered in dark hair and very, very muscular. The back was arched and its head was tucked. I didn't see a tail of any kind. I did, however, notice the hair on its back was considerably shorter than it was on the rest of the body. It seemed to just glide across the road, which I thought was a strange thing since it was very large. I'm guessing it weighed at least 500 pounds or more. I reached for my camera, which was in my lap, but the creature had already disappeared. We continued down the road and reached the parking lot, where I told her, please go back so we could look for prints, but she refused. I told her I thought we had just seen a Sasquatch, and she told me it must have been a large dog, possibly a Newfoundland, because, well, they are large black dogs. I told her that we had a better chance of seeing a Sasquatch in that particular area than a Newfoundland. It was then that she told me she was going to keep quiet about what we had seen and that I should do the same, which obviously I didn't do. I know what I saw, and it wasn't a dog, a deer, or anything I had ever seen before. Phantoms and Monsters, Sasquatch Report Number 1, Part 2. This is a transcript of the conversation I had with the witness. I did speak to her for nearly 2 hours. I'm quite familiar with this location, and there are 3 other reports at this location that I have filed personally. They are 30 minutes from my home, and I have been to them numerous times. After her initial encounter, she became quite interested in the Sasquatch phenomenon and was devouring as much information as possible. It was at this point she told her girlfriend about the first encounter, and the girlfriend told her they should maybe go to Monkey Mountain because I think they have lots of woods there. The friend was a non-believer, and she was just taking her there to humor her and then to do an I told you so once they got there and saw nothing. Her above report was very concise, and I'm going to add to it what I got out of it during our conversation. They were headed east on the road toward the parking lot. It had black hair, not fur. The hair on the arms was 2 to 3 inches long, and it appeared shorter on the massive back, but not by much. The back, arms, legs, and buttocks were very muscular, and she could see the musculature rippling as it moved. The head was tucked in toward the right side of its body as it moved from left to right. In her words, its movement was elegant, graceful, and flowing like a gazelle. The back was heavily arched, and it would be somewhat similar to what a human would look like if it were to try to run on all fours without the knees touching the ground. It's a very common description. She felt like it acted afraid. The hair was flowing as it ran, and the build was described as at least 8 feet tall and a minimum of 500 pounds. The bottoms of the feet were white, or at the very least considerably lighter than the rest of the body. The creature was incredibly powerfully built. This location has had recent and steady activity. As stated, her friend didn't see anything but a big dog, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Now, this witness would rate very high on the observational skills list. She is a retired psychologist, studied physiology and anatomy. She interviewed criminal suspects for a local police department, and she is a keen observer of body language and traits. Very well spoken, and her story never wavered. This type of witness would be in the top 5 of all the witness types I have interviewed by myself. She was clear as a bell, knows exactly what she saw, and she knows what she did not see. This sighting is within 100 feet of a previous report filed by this investigator. Thank you.
So that was Carter Bouchard, who is now a member of the Phantoms of Monsters 14 research team. And he's also with BFRO, and he's done many investigations with them over the years. So occasionally he's going to do an audio report of his from his Sasquatch investigations. So we appreciate that. So tonight, I welcome paranormal researcher, investigator, and author Dave Spinks to Arcane Radio. Now, Dave has been researching and investigating the paranormal since 1986 due to several experiences he had as a young man. Since that time, he has conducted several hundred investigations in the U.S. as well as Europe. Dave served in the U.S. Air Force for 8 years and went on to work as a federal law enforcement officer, retiring in 2011. Dave has been seen on many television programs, including Expedition X, Terror in the Woods, Paranormal 9/11, The Unexplained, In Search of Monsters, and These Woods Are Haunted, to name a few. He's also featured in the film Flatwoods Monster, A Legacy of Fear by Small Town Monsters. Dave often a featured guest speaker at paranormal conferences around the country. He is also an author on topics that include cryptids, hauntings, and ufology, releasing his first book, West Virginia Bigfoot, in 2018, and was featured in the highly successful Woodknock series by David Weatherly. Now, Dave is also the co-founder of the Society of the Supernatural with his colleague investigator Dave Weatherly. Visit Dave Spinks' website at davespinks.paranormalinvestigator.com. So, Dave, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, man, thanks for having me, as usual. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we hadn't talked about it for a couple of years, I imagine.
Yeah, it's been a...
So I'll let you catch up and tell us what you've been up to and what's going to be going on soon with you.
Oh, man, a lot of stuff in the works, with this whole COVID thing. It's kind of slowed the conference circuits down to a small dribble, so to speak. Yeah. So, I miss that part, getting out and meeting people and getting to hear their stories and their experiences. But, it's just the world we're living in right now, unfortunately. But other than that, I'm still pumping away on books. And I got a new project that I am working with a friend of mine named Billy Lewis called Orange Street Films. It's called the ScareNetwork.tv. It's a new streaming service where we're going to be featuring he's a horror filmmaker, so he's going to have some horror folks on there, some horror films, and we're going to feature a lot of real paranormal folks on there, including myself, where we're going to go out and we're going to share people's documentaries, their footage, their experiences. There'll be a little weekly podcast on there where he's interviewing various folks from the horror realm, plus, real supernatural and paranormal realms of all sorts. We're talking cryptids, UFOs, and hauntings, and we'll be featuring many other paranormal investigators on there as well. Once it gets up and running, it's a streaming network, so it will be subscription based. And right now we're filming a ton of content on it, for it. So it's exciting because we get to do what we really do, and there's no production company involved. There's no TV people involved. It's just the real boots on the ground type investigators doing what we all do, and that's what I'm most excited about. And that's the way TV's going anyway. They're moving everything to Discovery Plus, all these paranormal shows. So why not do it ourselves and do it the right way? That's what I'm excited about. So that's what we're doing. And we got our first documentary filmed. It's being put together right now, and it's called Malefice, and it's an investigation that me and my partner, guy I work with a lot too, Sean Austin, who was featured on Ghost Loop and the Demon Files with Ralph Sarchi. Well, long and short of it is we did an investigation 5 years ago at this place, routine investigation, one of the commercial spots. And lo and behold, the place we were staying in across the street turned out to have some really, really bad negative activity. And then we found out some history about the property. And lo and behold, basically it has been following Sean for the last 5 years. And we actually picked this thing up at other locations that we've been at over the last 5 years. And it's got to the point where it's affecting his life negatively. So we got with his mentor, Ralph Sarchi. Ralph Sarchi performed a minor rite on him. And we went back and pretty much did a full-blown exorcism, because he is a demonologist trained by Ralph Sarchi now. He's been training under him for several years. And we went back and filmed it all and got some crazy stuff. And we're excited to share that with everybody, on the new scarednetwork.tv. So it's exciting stuff. And it's one of those, it's kind of like we talk about, we've talked about it, I think, before, Ron, where sometimes when you're investigating these hauntings, you never know what's going to happen. And, they can be quite literally dangerous at some points. And that's pretty much what we got into on this one. And it affected him very negatively, over this last 5 years. And it's come through at other locations since that time when we've been investigating. The same voice, same person. Well, I wouldn't call it a person. I'd call it a negative entity of some sort. So, and then another exciting project I have going was with, our good friend David Weatherly. You've had him on your show many times. It's a documentary on a location. I can't spill the beans yet, but that no one's ever done. Very historical. It has to do with outlaws and the FBI. That's all I'll tell you about it. That project is all done. And it'll be coming out real soon too. So got some phenomenal evidence there too. And we filmed that one 2 years ago, and it's finally done. A lot of times these things take a lot of time to get put together the right way. So, it just is what it is.
Yeah,
So,
I understand completely.
Got some books coming out. I'm continuing my Real West Virginia Haunted series. I'll have books 2 and 3 out of that this year. Got a brand new Bigfoot book coming out. And some other really cool books coming out. So probably have 3 to 4 books out this year alone. Because with this last year, no conferences, man, I had all kind of time to finish up projects. So
yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, man,
I understand what you're saying about doing an investigation and something negative comes in the picture, and occasionally somebody will get an attachment and it'll follow them around. And I've seen it. I mean, it does happen. So that's unfortunate, but if it's taken care of, I guess it's pretty good.
Well,
so you might have got some pretty good video out of it.
We hope we took care of it. That's the thing, you never know until later on down the road. So
yeah. So you were involved with, and I had never talked to you about this, though it happened over 2 years ago, was the Willow's Weep investigation. Why don't you talk to us a bit about that and the location, some of the history behind it? Because I can't read and look at everything, and I missed this one completely.
Well, Willow's Weep is just one of those things. You know how we hear through the paranormal grapevine, I call it, about these haunted locations. Oh man, you got to go here. We went there and we got this, that, and the other. So I heard about the house. I think I went back. The first time I was there was probably 2014. I heard about it. I had saw an investigation the Foreman brothers did there. And then I knew those guys, so I talked to them about it. And they said, man, it was, to them, according to them, it was off the chain, and they had some really profound experiences. And they did capture some a couple of pictures and stuff that would blow you away. So of course, through the grapevine, I ended up going there and investigating it. And first time I was there, had a couple of really weird things happen. Like I was standing there and something hit underneath the floor really hard. It's so hard, in fact, that it almost like lifted me up a little bit. It was this loud bang. and then this burst of frigid cold air went right through me, and it felt like it came from under the house up through me. It was really bizarre. And then the standard battery drain happened, numerous pieces of equipment going off, disembodied voices, EVPs, had pretty much the whole gambit, besides barring any kind of apparition captures or anything like that. So I said, man, and I had a limited time the first time I went there, so I came back again, and then it was about the same, and it got a little, and then I started seeing, the second time I was there, I saw some weird shadow play, captured some really crazy light anomalies on the full spectrum camera, and so on and so forth. And as the years went by, I kind of went back several more times and, ran the whole gamut, started talking to all kinds of other investigators. Well, it had been a while since I'd been there. And back in 2007, I had become friends with the owner then. Her name was Brenda by that time. And she reached out to me one day out of the clear blue and said, hey, Dave, me and my husband are done with this house. And we feel that it's tried to kill us multiple times. Do you want it? And I was kind of taken back by it. I was like, what do you mean do I want it? She goes, well, I only trust you and one other person. And the other person I already talked to said they can't do it. They're just not in a position to do it. And I want to sell it to you if you want it. And I said, I don't know, Brenda. I mean, that place is pretty negative. Let me think about it. So I took about 3 or 4 days, and I said, well, what better chance as an investigator would I have to own my own paranormal laboratory, so to speak, so where I can let other investigators in, we can document things. And that's what I ended up doing. I bought it from her, and that's what I've been doing it with it since. And some really bizarre things have happened at this property to even modern day people, investigators. I had this one woman, her name was Michelle Fitzpatrick. I don't know if you guys know who she is. But she was prior law enforcement, pretty well known in the paranormal, not great big known, but a lot of people knew who she was. Well, she had a totally different take on this house than anyone I had talked to, plus what I've experienced there. And she was talking to me about, she felt that there was something interdimensional going on there. It was a big portal, and there was all kinds of stuff going in and out, right? And I said, well, I had called her, because she reached out to me through a mutual friend, Barry Gaunt, and she said, I want to talk to you about the house since you own it now. So I called her up, and we got to talking, and she said, and I said, well, hey, listen, I want to talk to you more, but I'm leaving to an event this week, and I'm leaving tomorrow, matter of fact. And she said, good, because she had a whole bunch of things her evidence that she wanted to give to me. And she said, we'll meet up, on the phone. I'll get back in touch with you next week when you get back. And I said, okay. So Tuesday came the next week, and I didn't hear back from her. So I waited a couple days, and I called her, and no answer, no answer. And then I jumped on her Facebook page because I was going to send her a message. And all I saw on her Facebook page was all these, oh my God, I can't believe it. Rest in peace, Michelle, and all this crazy stuff. And found out she had died at 2 o'clock in the morning, the night before I was supposed to get in touch with her. Her daughter found her deceased in her house, and with no apparent, it's still, nobody knows why she died, how she died. Like, the family's not talking about it. Only medical problems I knew she had, I knew because she had an injured back from law enforcement and stuff, and that's the only thing we know. And nobody can find out any different. So, coincidental, maybe coincidental, yes, who knows? But it's kind of just fishy out of nowhere. I got talking to her, and then boom, the day before I'm supposed to talk to her again, she's no longer with us. So, that's just one crazy thing. And it was so bizarre because she had a totally different outlook on this house than any other investigator. And maybe she was hitting on something that nobody else did, and it was maybe hitting the nail on the head, so to speak. And whatever this negative entity that's in that house decided, no, you're not going to tell that. I don't know. You just never know. But anyway, I ended up buying the house, and started letting people go in. Brenda was doing the same thing because she wanted answers too. The house was built in 1890. I found out just not too long ago by a 32nd degree Mason that the house was definitely built by the Masons for a Mason. I knew there was some Masonic symbology in this house, but I didn't know to the extent. So, and he took pictures of it when he was in with his group and told me all about it. He said, well, he said, you see that, there's triangles above every door. And mind you, this house is built in the shape of a cross, which is really bizarre. Okay. But if you think about the Templar Knights, that was one of their insignia, was the Templar cross. Even though it had double crosses, it had double lines across the normal cross. But it had 4 entrances and exits. Okay. Above each entrance and exit of this house was a triangle built into the structure, which is really bizarre. Then on every doorway, there are the temples of Solomon carved into the trim with and it's turned sideways so a non-Masonic member would not really recognize it. He sent me the literature on it and showed me exactly what it was. It matched up perfectly. And I was like, whoa, okay. And there's some other things with Masons in that house too. He was looking up information trying to find out if it was either a secret temple or an active temple that they used way back, because it was built in 1890, but can't find anything on it, even though there's definitely Masonic symbology. Could have been just he was a Mason and he wanted that in his house. Could have been as simple as that. So if you picture a cross in your mind, here's the top, goes like this, comes down, right? In every corner, there was a doorway in the initial building of the structure. Above each one of those doors, there's a 3-sided, there's a triangle, all pointing to the middle of the cross. Now, another bizarre feature of this house is underneath, it has a freaking fire pit dug in the crawl space, which I still can't wrap my mind around why in the hell somebody would build a crawl space under the house or a fire pit. The fire pit has granite rock around it, just like you'd see at a campfire. And in that pit, there are still ashes to this day. Another strange aspect to the house was after Brenda bought it, she bought it for her son to get started in life, to help him out. It was real cheap. And that was because the last person that lived in the house killed himself. He shot himself in the head. But as they were doing construction, trying to get this house ready for her son, she reported and the workers reported that tools would fly across the room. They would turn on, even some of them, sometimes when they weren't plugged in, your typical paranormal type of activity. Well, the first time she walked into the house, the son that was selling it to her of the last man that died in the house wouldn't go in, and she didn't know why. Well, they walked in, looked around, and she said, I think it was a piece of metal pipe or wood flew from the other wall and smacked her son right in the head and cut him on the forehead right off the get-go, the first time they ever walked into it. But so there were after that time they had to hoof up. They had a new laminate floor over the original floor from 1890. The original floor is still in there, but someone had put a new floor in it. Well, it was all hooved up from moisture, so they had to scrape it out, dig it out. And when they were doing that, in one corner of one room, they found a weird pamphlet that says it's from the Church of God. Okay, on the front of this pamphlet, it's got an upside down pentagram on fire, and it says, "Is the spirit world real?" Now, when you open this pamphlet up, it talks about necromancy, how to summon demons, and all this crazy stuff. I don't know about you guys, but me, any Christian organization I've ever heard of would never publish a pamphlet talking about how to do those types of things and all that sort of thing. And I looked it up. The book was published, or the pamphlet was published in 1985, and it's still available today. You can get it. So what it is the people that are running this are masquerading as a Christian organization, and it's more or less a cult. Okay. So
I've heard of the Church of God before, and it is a cult.
Me too, but this ain't the real Church of God. Let me tell you. I mean, they're totally different. Yeah, it's some weird sect of it that's into some weird stuff. So, the original owner died in the house. He was also a pedophile. He was charged in court. I've got the paperwork. He was previously married, and his new wife was previously married. They both had children from their first marriages. Then when they got married, they had more children. He actually was molesting at least one of his stepdaughters. He got caught. They charged him in court. I've got the paperwork. So he's a real piece of work, right? So as time went on, Brenda was fixing up this house. They were trying to fix it up. So she had a local guy doing maintenance, fixing up things, painting. And she sent him under the house one day to check the pipes. So And I'm talking, I've been under this house, man. I can barely squeeze my big butt down in there. And once you get down in the crawl hole, then it opens up to where you can kind of crawl on. You almost have to belly crawl. It's really low. And he gets under there to check the pipes. Well, he has to crawl over to the side of the house. And he said there was these weird mounds of dirt. I've actually interviewed this man, and he won't do it on camera because it scared him so bad. So he crawls under there, and he has to push the mounds of dirt out of his way to get to the pipes. So as he's doing this, a bone pops out of one of the mounds of dirt. He grabs it, starts looking at it, and then he claimed that something unseen physically attacked him to the point where he couldn't move, and it was in a sexual manner, mind you. And it was, he said he fought with everything he could just to get out of it. He finally got free of whatever this thing was, had the bone with him, took it to Brenda and said, I'm never going under that effing house again. And she didn't know what to do, so she took the bone to the local country doc down the road there. He looked at it, he said, yeah, it's definitely a child's arm bone, but it looks really old. So we don't know at this point if it's Native American or someone was murdered and buried under the house. Was this original owner, did he kill one of his kids? Who knows? So that happened. Another occasion when he was painting the outside with Brenda, the owner, the house is really tall and it only has one upstairs window and the whole upstairs is blocked off. It's another really strange feature. In the original home plans, there's supposed to be a staircase. There is no staircase. You can't find it. It's buried in the wall, or it was never put in, or it was taken out and boarded up. Now, you can make up your own mind whatever you want to do with that scenario, right? The only way to get into the upstairs part of the house, there's one outside window, and you have to pull the entire window pane out and crawl up in there. So they were painting up in there outside, and they had to pull a truck up and put a ladder in the bed of the truck so they could reach that high. This poor guy, the same maintenance guy, man, he's up there painting, and he said he heard this old woman's voice said, get the F out, away from my house or whatever. And then the ladder shoved off the thing and he went flying like 20 feet in the air and landed on his back on the ground. So he had that encounter there. Another encounter he had too is that he was mowing. He used to mow and everything for, whatever he could do to get some extra money. So he was mowing, and Brenda was in the backyard, and she's the one that told me the story, and I confirmed it through him. The mowing, the mower was going. She's cleaning up sticks in the backyard, whatever, and the mower stopped. And after like 10 minutes, she's like, that's weird. So she goes to the front of the house, and there's this guy that was working for her laying on the front porch like this, going, he was all out of it and everything. She's like, what happened? He said, something threw me off the lawnmower and I can't move. Well, they rushed him to the hospital. He had a broken vertebrae in his back where he flew off the mower. And we're talking, this ground is flatter than a pancake, man. There's no reason he should have flew off the lawnmower. Another crazy story that happened at this house. Brenda's three of her friends pulled up that she knew, and they all rode motorcycles and stuff, and big biker type dudes, and they were just BSing with her. And then he said, one of the guys said something to her about, I heard this, they say this house is haunted and all this, and this tree, you don't want to mess with this willow tree in the front. And I don't believe in none of that crap. And he ripped off a branch of the willow tree, threw it in a dash, and they took off, went down the road. She gets a call an hour later. The two brothers that were in the front seat got into a fist fight in the car while it was driving, and they lost control. The car went flipping off the road into the graveyard where one of the people that died in the house is buried, and they all got life flighted. They all got life flighted out.
Wow.
That's another bizarre story. I mean, there's a ton of them. One of the spookiest stories that she told me was, okay, so in the back of the house, there's a large metal building that's like 40 by 40. Metal building, cement floor. And she used to be a professional pool player. She played against like Black Widow on ESPN and all kinds of stuff. She had her pool table in there, and they would have family gatherings there and everything and grill out and stuff, because she owned the house next door to this house too. So, and she ended up marrying that guy that lived there all these years. And they had some kids over and stuff that were members of the family. And her little niece was like 3 or 4 years old, and they saw her standing outside the building waving and looking up, right? So they after a few minutes of that, they walk out there and go, who are you waving at, honey? And that same window I'm telling you that you got to pull out in the upstairs, She said, that little girl up in the window up there. And they're like, there's no little girl up there. She goes, yeah, she's right there. She's right there. Right. Nobody saw anything. So after a few minutes, they're saying, oh, okay, it's just, it's just child's imagination, whatever. A few minutes go by and the little niece starts screaming bloody murder. And they run over like, what's wrong? What's wrong? She said, that little girl came down from the window and bit me on my face. And they said, sure enough, in a few minutes, a human child bite mark showed up right on her face. And they never been back since. They left, never came back. And her husband reported that he saw, and he doesn't believe in none of the paranormal. Like he said later on, he saw an old man in a pair of overalls holding a little girl's hand, and they walked right through the wall there. There's been other people that have seen the curtains open when no one's in the house and looking out, people looking out of the house. And another little boy that was family relation to Brenda and them said he saw, came running in the building over there and said, I just saw Jesus Christ. And they're like, what are you talking about? She said, this man came out of the house, had a full beard, gray long hair and a white robe on. So I don't know, with that fire pit scenario that's going on there, I don't know if people were practicing witchcraft there at some time or whatever, also the man that shot himself in the head, his wife actually OD'd in the house as well.
Wow.
Several years before that, but the family has a big issue with that because the doctor said she died at the hospital. Well, we all know in most states you're not dead until the doctor says you're dead at the hospital, technically, But her husband knew those people. He lived there since the 60s and told me firsthand that he was friends with them and that he saw them wheel her out covered up. They were not working on her. She died in the house. So, there's this another strange story. There's a lot of years between the owner, the original builder, and his son living there that are unaccounted for. There's no records of who lived there, other than I think the family had it and they were renting it out to people, and they just did. The county's records there are a flipping mess. Let me tell you, I've been in that courthouse so many times researching. You can't find anything because they moved. The town used to be called Springfield. Now it's called Cayuga, and the records have been moved several times. There's a lot of stuff missing. But another spooky account that the old woman that lived on the other side of the house was like 95 when Brenda bought this house. Old as, she was up there. She told Brenda she couldn't remember what decade it was, like the 40s or 50s, that this woman moved in. She had a really weird nickname. I can't remember. Brenda couldn't remember what she said her nickname was, but she only went by one name. She had an older teenage boy and she had a little girl that was 4, maybe 5. The teenage boy was maybe 18, 19, 20 years old. They moved in there and they come to find out that the woman had been married 3 times and all of her husbands died mysteriously and she collected all the insurance money, right? Well, out of nowhere, after they lived there a short time, a year or two, the little girl came up missing. Nobody knows what happened. They did a big search, could never find her. And a short time later, the young man was found hanging in the house too. So,
wow.
That's hearsay though. I can't confirm it. I have no records of that. And the woman just disappeared, and nobody knew what her real name was because she went by a nickname, and nobody knew, who she was, where she went. And I'm thinking, well, maybe that little girl's arm bone that he found could be that little girl. I don't know. There's still a lot of work to be done at the house. I need to get GPR under the house, but here's the deal. I'm going to have to tear the whole floor up to do that, to get it in there. So, there's a lot of stuff. And I've had some good questions, well, people are like, man, why didn't they get law enforcement in there? I said, well, Brenda told me the doctor that she took the bone to called local sheriff and he said, well, the doc said it's very old. Just either get rid of it or put it back. It's probably Native American because there's a ton of Native American influence there. There was huge Native American battles with the French in that whole area. A lot of people died on both sides. Settlers, were killed, massacred, and the whole 9 yards. There's 2 major rivers that come into that little town right there by the house. The whole area under the house is a huge aquifer, and all the neighbors dig up Native American pottery, arrowheads, you name it, when they're digging their gardens. So you've got, and then right in front of the house, we've all heard the devil selling your soul to the devil at the crossroads story. Well, guess what? What's in front of the house? A crossroads, right in front, exactly in front of the house. So it's got so many factors that we look for possible causes of paranormal activity. I mean, it was a no-brainer for me to just, hey, let's do this. Let's study it, see if we can find out what's going on here. And that's what I'm doing with it, and there's a lot more to it. The Native Americans, the willow tree is very sacred to them. The roots go right down into under the house. So, and that house is stained with blood. Let me tell you, there's been, I think there's been 6 deaths total in that house, at least. Two, at least one by suicide. The other one was probably accidental, OD, whatever. And then the original owners all died in the house. Him, his wife, and the son too. And then we don't know about the kid hanging himself or being hung, and the little girl either. Now, I got another interesting email about a year after I first bought the house from a man who said his grandma lived in the house back in the 60s, and she was old school. And this house didn't have a kitchen back in those days. That was added into the house later. They used to have a summer kitchen in the back, a little building where they did all the cooking.
Right.
And then they cooked on one of those old cast iron stoves in the house, right? And this woman was old school. She would, after dinner, she would do all the dishes, set the plates and everything for breakfast the next day. Well, he said he remembered his grandma talking about she would come out almost every night after setting the table, and the dishes would be scattered all over the floor. Excuse me. And everything was in disarray. And the rocking chair in the house used to rock by itself all the time. So it's got paranormal activity reports going way back, man.
So this is in Indiana. What part of the state is this?
It's about 45 minutes west of Indy.
Okay.
Right on the border
toward Illinois. Yeah.
Yeah, right on the border of Illinois, like 15 minutes from the Illinois border. So also Indiana in general, and of course Dave wrote that book, and I have him coming on in a couple of weeks. But Indiana, my God, I mean, it is amazing, the paranormal activity and the cryptid activity in that state. Well, it is the crossroads state. Me and him were talking about that. It's so. Me and him spent at least 2.5 solid years of investigations in that state, man. And I have family ties to Indiana too. I have family that lives there, so I've been going there for quite a long time, and it just so happens I ended up buying a place there just to study the paranormal. But and there's so many other reports that go along with Willow's Weep. If you look on my YouTube channel, I've never seen a shadow figure like this long. I've been doing this quite a long time, and I've caught shadow figures, but nothing like this. And this was by pure happenstance. I've been filming a documentary about the place with a friend who's running the Scare Network TV with me. And we were up there just doing interviews for a couple of days, talking to me, talking about basically what we're talking about, and interviewing some of the locals. Well, we were done for the day, and we were in the back building packing up all the gear. And we got done, and he's like, "Oh crap, I left the GoPro in there." Well, he had stuck a GoPro up on top of one of the doors just for a extra angle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So thinking nothing of it, he walks in there, grabs a GoPro, throws it in his bag, and we're out of there. A month later, he calls me up freaking out. And this is a guy that's not an investigator. He's a film guy. That's all he does. He's like, "I'm never going in that effing house again." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Dude, I just emailed you the footage. I can't believe what we caught on that GoPro. Nobody's in the house. You hear this shuffling noise, dragging sound, and then in the back corner of one of those little rooms that used to be a door that they added these little rooms on, full-blown shadow figure in the middle of the day, walks across the room from head to toe. It's semi-transparent, but you can see everything.
Mm-hmm.
And there was nobody outside around the house. And even if it was somebody that walked up to the window, they would have been cut off at the legs down, because the windows are about 3.5, 4 feet high off the ground. Those are weird looking windows. You would have seen them on camera as well. So you can check it out on my YouTube channel. It's a short clip. It's called Shadow Man Captured. Just go on my videos and scroll down about 25, 30 videos, and you'll see it. Shadow Man Captured. It's at the Willow's Weep House. And after that thing goes across, something else comes out of the room behind it. Like it's a shadowy and then a white misty looking substance. And there's all kind of shadow play going on. and there's nothing there that could have caused it. And noises, unexplained noises inside the house is pretty phenomenal. And that was by pure happenstance through the middle of the day. So,
well, as you know, these shadow figures, they're only going to come into a place where there's a lot of energy, and you know they got to have feed off this stuff somehow. So, and I was going to ask you if you had any shadow person activity, because that stuff kind of seems to follow places like this where there's just a lot of unexplained activity, and yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, it was trippy, man. I still am blown away by that capture, you know. And then another weird, bizarre thing Brenda used to tell me about was when she first started letting paranormal people in there, because she wanted answers. They're trying to figure out what the hell is going on in this place. She said there's a graveyard about maybe 150 yards catty corner to the house. She said time after time when someone would die and they bury them in there, that the people that were investigating the house would get the names on their recorders and on their ghost boxes and stuff of the people that were just buried in that graveyard. So, and the way this house is built in the shape of a cross, you think about it, it had 4 entrances and exits. These triangles are all pointing to the center of the house, and directly under the center of the house, you have this bizarre fire pit. It's almost as if it was built to funnel energy into that thing. And a lot of people said I've had psychics going there, metaphysical people, regular investigators, they all feel there's a doorway in the center of that house that's been open. You know,
that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like there's a portal there, some type of vortex or portal.
When you stand in the center of that house, some people get really dizzy, they get disoriented. You can really feel it. I set a compass right there one time on the ground, and it went whoo, and then stopped and went back the other way. It was doing all kind of bizarre stuff. And and equipment goes crazy in that place. Battery drain, like brand new batteries will drain out like you wouldn't believe in that place, man. It's crazy.
Wow. Have you ever had one of the local shamans or elders come in there from the local tribe?
No, not yet. I've been talking to a couple though, and I think my plan for the house, it's very negative. And if you ever spend any time there, you'll feel it, man. It's not a good place. I don't even let people under 18 in the place, period.
No, I don't blame you.
And because I'm scared. I don't want nothing to happen to anybody anyway. And I keep it locked down for the most part. Every once in a while, I'll open it up for investigations, but because I'm trying to pay the taxes on the place and stuff, you know what I mean? So, but it needs a lot of work. You know, it was built in 1890, and it's so far away from me. I think what I'm going to end up doing is bringing in I'm probably going to bring in a Catholic priest, a minister, a shaman, and a light worker, and really get down and try to close that shop up, man, and bless it. And I may even tear the place down. I mean, that's how strongly I feel how negative it is.
Yeah, it would be nice to get a whole bunch of people involved as far as metaphysical and try to get it and I don't know, try to get their opinions as to what they believe is going on. Document it, then lock it up. Either lock it up, tear it down, burn it down, or whatever you want to do.
I mean, I've got there's been hundreds of people in there investigating. I've got tons of evidence on the place. I don't need any more evidence.
Yeah.
It's just the next step would be to try to figure out what's going on there. You know, is it a portal? Is it interdimensional, or is it demonic, or what is it? You know, or is it just nasty spirits, you know, in there that attack people? Brenda, the first time she let a group in there, she said something. It felt like something punched her in the gut so hard, like she passed out in front of people, and she had 3 ginormous scratches on her back where she was bleeding through her shirt. She had to go to the hospital, and her liver or her spleen, one of the two, I can't remember, was actually ruptured from this.
Wow.
And then her husband, remember earlier in the show, I told you they felt that the thing tried to kill him twice, whatever it is.
Right.
The husband never had, this guy's in good shape. He's probably maybe our age, a little bit younger. He went over there to do some work one day on the house. Boom, kicks over, has a stroke. And then has first he has a heart attack the first time. A mild heart attack. They take him, he gets through that, you know, and everything. And then later on goes back to work on the house like several months. They locked the house up during this time, several months. And then he went back over there to do something or get something. Boom, kicks over with a stroke. And he's like, that's it, we're done. They ended up moving 20 miles away. And that's when I ended up buying the place, and they moved 20 miles away, and they sold the other properties that are right next to it that they had too. That's how strongly they felt that this thing tried. And they said they would have stuff happening in their house that was next door too that they couldn't explain. This thing was coming over there now, and she said, that's it, we're done. So, when people go through something like that, if they're going to sell their property and their homes, that there's some serious stuff going on.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to ask you if there were any neighbors there, because I was just wondering if they were having activity as well.
Well, there's another. I found out through some of the neighbors there and the locals that there's another house down the road that has a lot of stuff going on too, and then another house that's kind of close to that other one, but it's a little bit farther away. Mm-hmm. So it seems like also I found out there's some Native American burial mounds right in that area as well. So
I have no surprise of that. Yeah,
there's all kind of stuff going on native wise there. And another weird thing is, so during the settlers and the Native American wars there with the French, they finally came to a peace agreement, and the chief at that time, I forget what his name is off the top of my head, but the county is shaped like it's really long and weird looking. Well, the chief went boom, stuck his spear in the ground and said, where the shadow hits, that's your guys' area, and where the light hits, that's our area. So if you think about that, that was very significant. He gave the white settlers where the shadow was, the dark area, and they kept the light area. So he knew what he was doing,
Yeah, he knew what he was doing.
It's still shaped like that to this day. And that's like a legend, a local legend there that talks about how the county got its shape and everything.
What tribe was there?
I'm not sure, man. I think there was a couple of different ones. I don't know what tribe was in that area. I think it was.
I'd have to look at. That was the old Indian territory with Indiana, so there was a lot of activity in there. You talk about the French and all the battles they had. Yeah, you're right. There was a lot going on there.
Yep, I'd have to look. I think there were several tribes in that area. That whole area in Ohio with all the Great Serpent Mound and the Circle Mounds, that from there all the way through that area. Illinois is full of Native American stuff. So
yeah, when I started getting involved with all this stuff in Chicago with the winged humanoids and stuff, we were getting sightings down as far down into Indiana as well, and I was just shocked at all the crazy stuff I was hearing from people.
Yeah, I think it's all interrelated to Native American elementals and protection spirits and curses. I mean, basically, let's face it. The whites come in, take their land, they're going to put a curse on you. That's just how it is. And same with the Ohio River Valley Chief Cornstalk. He put a curse on.
Oh my God! Well, I was going to ask you about Point Pleasant. What's your opinion with the Mothman thing? Since I've been doing these other investigations, and I've been to Point Pleasant several times and have done investigations there, I believe personally that the energy is indigenous related because of all the Indian activity. And, they had all these battles between other tribes and the settlers and everything. It was, it was a hot area.
Oh, yeah. You got two major rivers coming in there. You got the Ohio and the Kanawha meeting right there. There was Revolutionary War battles fought there, Civil War battles fought there. It goes way back. And of course, they brought Chief Cornstalk there under the guise of a peace agreement, and they killed him. And he was the head honcho for that whole area for many tribes, and they even talk about it. It says in the whole lore that he, on his dying breath, he cursed that whole area, and look what's happened there. You've got hauntings, you've got major UFO sightings, and you've got, of course, the Mothman and other strange beings sighted all over that area, and I 100% agree with you. I think it's indigenous related, and if you go back to ancient folklore, you've got the whole winged Pazuzu demon. Who's to say the Mothman ain't some form of that? I don't know, it's,
I'm just under the impression that, I have listened to a lot of EVPs that people have taken, especially around the old West Virginia Ordnance Works area down around the old TNT plant. And I am of the opinion that the Mothman and maybe some of this other stuff that people see are summoned by some strong indigenous spirit, or as a protector or some type of sentinel. You know, that's just the sense I get when I started really looking deep into it. And in fact, I think a lot of these winged humanoids may actually be summoned beings as well. Now, you know, I had no proof of that, but it just seems interesting that with all the crazy stuff that has happened historically around that area, that this type of being would actually show up. And, you know, and people don't realize there's still sightings around there. I mean, the Mothman sightings are continue around there.
Oh yeah, all around West Virginia, PA. I mean, it's all, and it seems to always be in a Native American hotspot for the most part. You know, I mean, it really does. Even these hauntings, me and Weatherly talk about all the time. Once we start delving into the land and the area, sure enough, almost probably 90-something% of the time, it's Native American, a Native American hunting ground or sacred land way back when. I mean, it's something related to these indigenous tribes, you know, and you have to take a hard look at that as an investigator, because it seems like more and more things are showing up related to that aspect of it.
Well, it's like the place where I had my winged humanoid sighting back in '88, which is actually just down the road from me now. And it was a main area for Susquehannock Indians. They actually did a lot of raiding around that area. Historically, they had actually taken a lot of settlers out of there. Then the area became an actual trading post. But yeah, I think the indigenous influence in these beings is strong. And you know, I don't know how we're ever going to figure it out. But you know Tim Renner. Now Tim Renner is part of my, you know, the Famous Monsters 40 research team too, and he's just down the road from me. And that area where he does his work at, right there along the Susquehanna, there's all kinds of crazy stuff showing up there. I mean, you know.
Well, yeah, I did. One of my craziest investigations, Lon, was in Wilkes-Barre, PA, believe it or not.
Okay.
I spent a month in this house and then went back 3 more times at 2 weeks at a time.
Was it Smurl House?
No, but I can't really say.
Yeah, it's pretty similar.
It's related to them. I'll just say that. Okay?
Oh, okay.
They deny it to this day, but it's a long story. You'll see it in my book coming out with me and Weatherly are on it. But I actually had a meeting. This guy found out we were there. Turns out this guy is a high up in the Native American Susquehanna tribe. I mean, probably the highest dude up there. His grandma was the chief of that tribe. Let's just put it that way. And we couldn't film him. We couldn't record him, anything. But we had a secret meeting with this guy. Takes us to this restaurant. We have to meet in the back, and then we go in. This huge Russian dude comes out, and he just like, ugh, and he lets us in. He's like, no cameras, no recorders. We go into this restaurant. It's just the chief and his assistant over there. And we meet this guy. And a very well-known person was with me. We'll just say his initials are JZ. Figure it out for yourself.
Okay.
When you shook this man's hand, you felt the energy coming off of him. And he told us that, and he brought out all these family pictures and pictures of the whole area from way back. I mean, we're talking some of the first pictures ever taken in that area of his tribe and everything else. And he said, see this area right here? And it showed all these Native American graves that had been desecrated. He said, that house you guys are in sets right where these graves were. He said, the only thing that's going to stop the activity in that house is you're going to have to tear that house down, and you're going to have to build a medicine garden, and you're going to have a water feature. He said, I'm going to give you some things to do that you can slow it down, but it's not going to satisfy the elemental Native American spirits until you do this, because those graves were desecrated. And of course, the guy that I was working with at the time, he had bought in the house like I did, the Willow's Weep house, to study the paranormal. He's like, I can't do that. I can't do that. And he goes, well, you're asking for trouble, son, you know, and I mean, and this and that. And ended up, we all were not friends after that, except for me and Jay-Z are obviously, and a couple other people. But a lot of bad things happened to all of us after that. And I ended up, right after that investigation is when I ended the friendship with this guy. And then I noticed this weird lump on my leg, right? looked like an ingrown hair, like a pimple. Well, after a little bit longer, it got a little bit bigger, got the size of about a dime, and it got the size about of a nickel. And then I said, man, I'm going to go get this checked out at the doctor at the VA. Went down there. My doctor started pushing her. She said, she goes, stand up here on this table. Started pushing on my leg. And she's like, oh my God. I'm like, well, don't be saying that. What's the problem? She goes, I'm sending you upstairs for an ultrasound right now. I go up there, and it turns out I have a mass in my leg bigger than a softball. Came out of nowhere right after that investigation.
Wow.
So within 2 weeks, I'm in surgery and they pulled this thing out. I said, I want pictures of that. Take pictures of it. So they took pictures of it. The thing was like this big, like a softball, man. So they sent it off for testing, of course. And the doctor's like, man, when I met him, he's like scratching his head. He goes, this is one of the weirdest things I ever see. Number one, for the location it's in. Number two, it has cancer in it, but it's not cancer. It doesn't make any sense. And they even had a weird, instead of I'm trying to think of what they were. Okay, it's not they call it a scarnoma, but there's another name for regular cancer. Like sonoma or something. What's that other one? There's this one and that one.
Sarcoma?
Sarcoma. Yeah, this was a scarnoma, they called it. Something totally different. And he's like, it's very bizarre. And and at that time I was having these dreams every night that this black cloud was around me and these arms were coming out, trying to grab me, these black arms. And every night they would get a little closer. And then one night they finally grabbed a hold of my arm and I went like that. This is all in my dream, right? I woke up sweating profusely and my shirt had a little rip and I had a scratch on my arm. That's when I knew I got an attachment from this freaking place. I went and got blessed by a Catholic priest, a minister, and a shaman. And at that time, man, I was going through a really, really bad divorce and I had financial difficulties. Like I almost went totally broke. All this stuff was going on. As soon as I did that cleansing, everything turned around overnight. So I knew that I carried home something from that investigation. And I contacted that Native American and he said, I'm going to give you a name and a number. You call this man and he's a shaman. He will help you. And he's one of the ones that I had do that. And I also had Willow do some stuff on me because he's a shaman too. So this stuff is dangerous. It can and will affect you. Let me tell you, I've experienced it and it's not fun. And I had to go through like 3 major surgeries. And I can't say it's paranormal 100% because I can't prove it, but it's so coincidental. What's the chances this thing comes out of nowhere right after this crazy investigation in PA, in a Native American site, sacred Native American site, and these things are pissed, let me tell you. So,
that that whole area up there, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, I have had some crazy incidents reported to me from up there. That's a big upright canine dogman area now. I mean, we have been getting a lot of sightings around there.
There's some big mountains in that area, man. And, and the Poconos up there. And let me tell you something. If you do a little research, there's a ton of satanic groups in that area. A ton of them. Yes. And there's newspaper articles. There's been satanic murders up in there. And you can look it up. There's a whole bunch of covens up there. I mean, it's there. So that's kind of interesting. You're talking about these dogmen and these black dog type sightings. That can run right along with that type of practice.
Yeah, in recent years we have been getting a lot of sightings of these upright canines in that area. And of course, you talk about the Poconos, we have been getting there too. It's bizarre. Well,
back
Dave,
when me and Weatherly wrote that book on this, what's coming out?
Yeah.
That little town, Wilkes-Barre is not that big. It's a good sized city, but it's not. It has
right down the river.
Higher murder rate than New York City, mind you.
And that doesn't surprise me.
That Native American told us that used to be that tribe's sacred medicine garden area, that whole area, because they had beautiful springs there. They grew all their medicines there, and then the whites came in, huge battles. Lots died there too, and boom. Now look what's going on there.
Wow. During Agnes, Tropical Storm Agnes back in 72, that Wilkes-Barre area really got nailed. I mean, it was terrible. I mean, the river was tearing up cemeteries. It was that bad, you know.
Hmm.
The whole way, you know. But I know Wilkes-Barre got hit bad, and I have talked to several people, and they tell me things just have not gotten better since the floods up there. I don't know if it brought something out or did something, but
I think
you
it's
know,
one of those places like we talk about. It's cursed.
yeah,
I really do.
interesting. Well, I tell you, Dave, you know, is there anything else you want to tell us about your website or whatever?
Just
And
check out the scarenetwork.tv, guys. That's going to be a fun
oh,
thing.
okay,
You know, we're going to get a lot of other investigators involved with that as time goes on. A lot of content on there, and it's all going to be the real. You know, it's no TV production companies involved, and
right.
what we do paranormally on there it should open your eyes.
Well, you get that going. I'm going to have you come back on here, and we'll help promote it for you. Okay.
Cool, man. I appreciate it.
Well, you take care and have a good weekend, and I'll be talking to you soon.
You too, Lon. Take care. Thanks for having me.
Okay, you take care now. Now, if you have an unexplained encounter or sighting, feel free to contact me through the Phantoms of Monsters blog site. If you're interested in supporting Phantoms of Monsters and Arcane Radio, you can use PayPal donation buttons on the blog and newsletter. This YouTube channel, Beyond Explanation, new content coming in. We got a bunch of shows on here now. We've got a few things coming up very soon, which we will have an announcement next Wednesday about a few new things. So make sure on the Ask Line Anything. So make sure you come on Wednesday night, and then we'll, you know, you can hear that and ask some questions and get the whole skinny on that. So, and of course, always come on, check it out, and subscribe. I want to again thank Dave Spinks for coming on this evening. I want to thank you for listening to the show. Stay healthy. Have a safe and enjoyable weekend. Bye.